Welcome to a very, very special episode of the Sharp Football Show. We are joined by ESPN's top NFL analyst, Dan Orlovsky, and you can find him everywhere. Earlier today, he was on Get Up. He also did the Pat McAfee show. He is an analyst for ESPN's Monday Night Football. He's on SportsCenter. He is everywhere, and he was gracious enough to join us to break down some of the teams, the quarterbacks, the play callers as we head into the 2025 NFL season. It's a great interview. You're not going to want to miss it. Momentarily, we'll get to that, but real quick, two quick announcements. The first one is that our early bird discounts end today. So after today, you're not going to be able to get anything early bird pricing. So for sports betting, for fantasy football, for the book, for every single item on the website, you can get early bird pricing if you go there today. So that's site-wide. Everything is on early bird pricing. Second quick announcement is the 2025 football preview book, which here's the hard copy. You can find this up on Amazon, but if you want the PDF, you can get this 50% off using the code SHARP50. This is 586 pages breaking down everything I learned last season from studying all off season and what I think is going to happen this upcoming season in 2025. 32 individual team chapters. You will not find a better preview to get yourself prepared for the upcoming season. Again, whether you're interested in fantasy football rankings, we've got all of those in here. Whether you're interested in betting or futures, we've got all that information in here. So don't miss out on this opportunity. Enter the code SHARP50 to get it for 50% off. All right, with that said, let's get into the Dan Orlovsky interview. All right, Dan, super excited to have you on the show here. First time ever. I'm excited to talk to you about the upcoming season. But first, getting ready for the season. You are all over the place on ESPN. You're in Get Up. You're in NFL Live. You're covering games. Your analysis is spread throughout the network because you're one of their preeminent analysts of the NFL. What is it like for you to prepare throughout the offseason? Like, what are you doing to get yourself ready so that you can begin analyzing all of these teams and all of these quarterbacks, all of these coaches, et cetera?
Yeah, I think so. One, there's like segments almost of when it comes to, for me, NFL coverage. You get done with the season and then it's to go through that free agency period. So you're all in on just free agency and kind of what happens, team needs, all that stuff. And then very similar, the draft. And so then after the draft, like I try to do everything from the end of April really until like late July, August of kind of turning my mind off because there's such an mental horsepower needed and, just exhaustion for the season. So I try to turn it off. And then late July, early August, I'll go back and kind of reread a lot of the notes that I have on the teams from the previous season of, just things I remember liking or disliking, coaching changes, all that, and trying to refresh my mind on who those teams were from the previous year. That's why I keep all my notebooks from the previous seasons. And then trying to take that and marrying it with what I'm seeing just on the preseason tape. And so like trying to get an overall perspective of who those guys are, who those teams are, who those units, offenses, defenses, lines, stuff, and then getting ready for the season. That's kind of the process I go, because once the season starts, it's just taking in everything that I'm seeing and spitting it out. So it's a constant cycle that feels consistently connected.
No, absolutely. Now, you obviously dig in really deep, and you have to. I just got to ask you, if you don't have a good answer, we'll clip it. So don't worry about giving me the honesty here. But how much of this sucker do you end up getting through? This is the book. Dan gets one each year.
Of course.
Do you end up finding anything of use in this book?
Yeah.
For somebody at your level, what do you make of it?
Yeah, no, I definitely do it. Like I want to be honest with you, Warren. It's sometimes if I have a vantage point of a team, and I'm, because numbers tape, like which one, and so like I'll go to that book to see like, okay, if is my expectation that the Seahawks secondary is going to be as good, or did they play against the easiest or backup quarterbacks on a consistent basis, or subpar passing games of the previous season. So I don't want to sit here and tell everybody I'm getting through the yellow books front to back, cover to end, but there's a lot of things that I just kind of try and go and reaffirm, or maybe try to change the perspective of with that.
Absolutely. Now, one of the best things that you bring to the table, I think, is your unique vantage of quarterbacks, having played the position for years and years. Let's talk about this article that you wrote where you go through and you analyze 7 key traits for the quarterbacks. You published it last week. I'll go ahead and list those traits. 7 key traits for quarterbacks: arm strength, ball placement, mechanics, decision-making, pocket presence, rushing ability, and second reaction. Now, obviously, you ranked each quarterback 1 to 10. Well, not each quarterback. You ranked the top 10 quarterbacks in each of those traits. Which of those traits, what would you say is the most important trait for a quarterback to master at the NFL level that's going to help elevate their game the most?
Yeah, I can go 1 through 7 with them. I'd say number 1, it's decision making, because you're the person that's entrusted to do that every single play. And there's a lot of that decision making that isn't just strictly attached to throwing. It's what you do at the line of scrimmage. Do you get in and out of the right plays? Do you get out of bad plays? Do you communicate and get everybody on the same page? So the decision making it has to be 100%. You got to pitch a perfect game to play at a consistent high level. Number 2, ball placement. I say this all the time. Every quarterback in the NFL is accurate. You're in the NFL. Accuracy is throwing the ball to your guy. Ball placement's throwing it away from the defender. So the guys that are, the tops of their games in decision making and ball placement, those are the top 5 guys in the league. That's Joe and Lamar and Patrick and Josh. So that's 1, 2. I'd say number 3 is pocket, movement, pocket, just because you're playing in a muddy space on a consistent basis. And so who can kind of move and operate the best in that, I would probably put as 3. Number 4, second reaction. Would that have been a different story 10 years ago? Yeah, but the second reaction stuff and pocket are often attached to each other. That second reaction of, do you get away from bad? Do you go make something good? Do you go make something great? And I think that the elite quarterbacks, the great quarterbacks, that's a necessity nowadays in their game. And then I'd probably put, arm strength and mechanics. Everyone jumped on me because I didn't have Patrick in the top 10 of mechanics. That's what makes Patrick so great, is he's mechanically not that great, and he still does stuff that should be incapable of. But 1, 2 is decision making and ball placement.
Interesting. I love that way that you described the difference between ball placement and accuracy to your guy away from the defender. That's something I haven't really thought of before. Now, obviously, you're going through these ranks and you're ranking the traits. And I think it's a very unique and valuable exercise because it's different. Everybody just wants to rank the top 10 quarterbacks or the top 20 quarterbacks, but ranking them by trait initially and then kind of zooming back out, were you surprised at all by how they ranked by trait once you looked at the overall picture compared to the public sentiment about some of these quarterbacks? Did anybody surprise you based upon ranking high or not even on the list very frequently?
Yeah, I think there's guys that, when you take the step back and you reevaluate, because I do it and then I let it sit for a week, and then we have a conversation, me and the people that are behind some of the presentation of it. I would tell you that I guess not surprised, but Baker's name shows up a good amount, and you're like, man, Baker, Baker's really solidified himself. And then there's moments when you go, am I really going to leave Jared Goff off this list, or Jalen Hurts off this list, or Justin Herbert off that list? And so it reaffirms even more so, like, man, there's just a lot of really good players, that Jordan Love. And there's moments when you go, okay, I really don't want to make a top 10 quarterback list in 7 different categories and not have a Jordan Love in there. So you try to find a way to get a justifiable Jordan Love in there. And so, but I would tell you Baker and maybe Geno Smith were 2 guys that showed up a good amount where I was like, better players than probably the public perception.
Football season is right around the corner, and there's no better way to lock in your fantasy dominance early than with Best Ball on DraftKings, where you draft once and ride your roster all season long. And right now, DraftKings is giving all customers a can't-miss offer. Draft one, get one. Enter a lineup in the $15 million best ball contest for just $20, and you'll score another best ball ticket to play free for a share of $15 million, giving you a second shot to win big. It's easy. Just draft your dream team once, no weekly management required, and let your top scorers automatically start each week. Across the whole season, every breakout star, every clutch play, every touchdown will count towards your quest for a share of $15 million. And if you're looking for someone to plug into your best ball lineup, there's nothing better to buy than year 2 wide receivers. Looking at wideouts that have been selected outside of the top 24 based on years in the league, second-year wideouts have delivered the highest hit rates for beating their ADP and delivering wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2 scoring seasons. Download the DraftKings Daily Fantasy app now to draft your $20 best ball lineup to play for a share of $15 million and get a second ticket to play free for a share of $15 million. That's 2 chances to win big without ever setting your lineup again. Draft one, get one. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours.
We'll get to one guy that didn't show up that I want to talk about in detail a little bit later. But, you know, one of the things is I'm looking at your quarterback traits and how these guys ended up getting ranked. It always clicks in my brain about how difficult it is to separate a quarterback from his play caller. I'm sure you experienced this as a quarterback, you know, playing, but then also as you're evaluating these guys. I mean, take, for example, we know that Patrick Mahomes was drafted in 2017 by Andy Reid and the Chiefs. What if in that very same draft, instead of Andy Reid getting his hands on him, he goes to the Miami Dolphins with Adam Gase as their head coach, and Adam Gase is calling plays for them? Our perception of quarterbacks is so closely tied to like who they are, but the reality is it is very closely tied to the play caller themselves. And I think that that's what's unique about the NFL compared to all the other sports, right? Like you don't even know who coaches these tennis players or golfers, you know, Major League Baseball, who's the manager of Shohei. Like you don't even think about these types of things. The guy steps to the plate, he's either good or not. But with quarterbacks, it's so closely tied. How difficult as an evaluator for you is it to separate their ability from the situation they find themselves in via the play calling and coaching?
Yeah, it's challenging because, you know, every quarterback has got different skill sets that and traits that give them the chance to survive and then thrive. And then all of them have flaws and weaknesses that you don't want to be exposed. And so, you know, when I'm trying to watch these guys from the college to the NFL world, I would tell you, you're trying to find all those traits that you believe give them the opportunities to be big time players. And so that kind of goes to that list of ranking. But then when it's attached to the play caller and then the supporting cast around them, I would tell you individually, the attachment to the play caller, for me, it often starts with what is the player flawed at? Okay, what does he not do well? And that doesn't make him not a very good to great player, but what does he not do well? And does that play caller minimize exposing him to that? Sometimes, I mean, I was around a quarterback that Matthew Stafford that you could take one play and he would love that play out of a certain formation and hate that play out of a different formation. He just did not see it the same way. And so is the play caller not exposing that player to their flaws, to things that they don't like, to things that they don't see well, to things that they don't operate well, okay? And then are they constantly allowing them to be in a world with the things that they do love, that they do operate, that they do cleanly? So like that's the starting point between the quarterback and the play design and play caller relationship that I'm trying to constantly pay attention to. And then when it comes to the overall like production and performance, I really kind of believe there's 2 groupings. One, if our team's beat up, we're down players, our offensive line is lost, a couple of starters, our number 1 receivers out, our defense gave up 30. Are we still in it because of you? Like, are we still in games because of you giving us a chance to win? And then also, if we do put the necessary people around you and we have the proper talent, can we win and do we win a championship with you? And that puts you into a very fair group. And so like, that's where, you know, a player like Jalen Hurts, he probably isn't super high in a ton of like those rankings of mine. But that being said, the Eagles gave him the necessary people around. He went and won the Super Bowl. So like at the end of the day, like that's a very, very big accomplishment, indifferent of him doing it with the supporting cast. He did it.
Yeah, as you're talking there, I'm thinking of a couple of play callers that come to mind this year that I'm really interested to see if they can avoid calling too many plays where we're going to maximize the flaws, and can we hide them?
Yeah.
Caleb Williams with Ben Johnson. I think Ben Johnson is going to come in, really figure out a way to minimize some of those flaws that we saw last year. I'm excited
Sure.
about the under center and the ability for them to utilize a little bit more play action. And then I go down to Atlanta with Zach Robinson, who I was really impressed with how he worked around some of the limitations of Kirk Cousins last year and the lack of mobility, especially early on in the season, and what he's going to bring to Michael Penix. Do you have any thoughts on either of those two guys?
Yeah, I so agree with Caleb and Ben. You know, week 2 of the preseason, Caleb's first preseason action, you loved what you saw. I think number one, like get my number one read open. If you're the player, to the coach, you're like, I just make this easy on me. Get the number one guy open. The defense will tell me who the number one person is. Get him open. And we saw that a lot in that first start in the preseason for Caleb, and that ball came out. I mean, Caleb is the guy that we've all talked about holding the ball too long and holding the ball too long. Ball was out at like 2.1, 2.2 seconds all the time. So that's great. Number one was open a lot. So how much can they live in that world? And can that happen from Ben Johnson to and for Caleb will be huge. The next step is going to be, well, if number one's not open, how quickly can he get to 2 and or 3? And so watching that and how much Ben lives in the world of finding ways to get number one obviously open, Caleb delivering, and then how much he minimizes, and to a point, you can't do a ton of it, but minimizes, and maybe it's not the amount, but it's the situational moments when a number 2 and number 3 is the guy who's got to get the ball there. And so be interesting to see that. And then with Zach and Michael Penix, I like Zach. I do. I had great talks with him last year. I remain adamant that I don't think they did enough play action last year. I think they should do more of it with Michael Penix than certainly did last year. And I think, you know, the appeal with Michael is how many big plays can we go get? You know, he's a big game hunter. He's got an absolute hand cannon, and they've got people that can go stretch the field vertically and go get some of those big plays. So I want to see how much they chase that in Atlanta, because there is a reality with where defenses play nowadays structurally that you do want your efficient pass game. And so how well can Michael operate that? How do they go about getting it? And how much they call it? Like I'll sit here and tell you with Tanner Engstrand in New York with Justin. Justin has never been good at the get the ball out quick game, get the ball out quick game. But you want that part in your offense. So how do they go about getting that done? Is it more RPOs? Is it more perimeter screens? Because you don't want to just call quick game just to call quick game if your quarterback can't operate quick game that well. You know, and so like how do they mask getting to that and not asking him to be something that he's not when it comes to that style of his game?
That's going to be a huge challenge. Great point, because I think there's such a big difference between Aaron Rodgers and Justin Fields in that time to throw. And Aaron Rodgers really helped make that offensive line look a lot better with his quick release and getting rid of that football. And that's the exact opposite inverse of what Justin Fields does. And I'm wondering how bad that offensive line is going to look now that Justin's back there holding the ball for 3 or 4 seconds, etc. So unique one there. Speaking of those play callers, and Ingstrad is one of these guys, there's 12 new play callers around the league. I'm going to not allow you to choose Ben Johnson or Liam Coen, because I think these are the two obviously get head coaching jobs, 2 elite guys. Of these other 10, we're going for Schottenheimer, Nick Caley down in Houston, John Morton in Detroit, Chip Kelly with the Raiders, Josh McDaniels with the Patriots, Kellen Moore and the Saints, Ingstrand you just mentioned with the Jets, Kevin Petula with the Philadelphia Eagles, Clint Kubiak with the Seahawks, and John Grisser with the Bucks. Which of those, just by his own play calling, improves that team the most this year, in your opinion?
I'm going to say Clint Kubiak in Seattle. So I think the best way to describe it is it has the chance to be a complete offense. When I talk about complete offenses, there's a lack of identity or a lack of predictability in a good way, you know, where, and this comes from that tree, that Kubiak Shanahan tree, that McVay tree, where, you know, when I talk about variance, there's a variance of breaking the huddle and getting to the line of scrimmage. How fast is that? How slow does that happen? There's a variance in snap cadence and when you're snapping the ball and the weaponizing of that. There's a variance in how many different ways you shift indoor motion. There's a variance in the shift in motion speed by your players. And then there's different forms of that quick game that we talked about. There's different forms of the play action games. There are different launch points. There's a variation in your run game. There's a run game that's inside. There's a run game that's outside. I think Clint is going to bring this kind of Cheesecake Factory menu of offense to Seattle that I think is going to help that offensive line that 2 years ago was starting to become a strength that last year became a weakness. This offense usually gets offensive lines to perform better than as a group than maybe the individual pieces. I think number two, it will allow Sam Darnold to be very much so in a similar situation to what he had in Minnesota that I think plays to his strength. Both those backs have the opportunity to be physical downhill backs in Seattle. JSN having the opportunity to get the ball done. So I just think Clint Kubiak has, because if you get a complete offense that is efficient yet explosive and doesn't have to be wildly, 32 points a game offense, but with the defense, and I think in Seattle with McDonald's, it's going to be really, really multiple. I just think it gives them the opportunity in Seattle to be a difficult out.
Yeah, Kubiak obviously had that quick game on display, pre-snap motion, heavier personnel in there, and they were throwing really short, minus 0.3 air yards per attempt for Sam Darnold's 4 completions on that opening drive in the preseason game. And Clint Kubiak impressed a lot of us to start last season with the first couple of games down in New Orleans. Can't forget that. Obviously, we saw the Eagles come in and stop some of the things that they were doing with the creative defensive coordinator there. But that was a fun start to the season last year for the Saints. All right, Dan, thanks so much for joining us today. We were going to have part 2 of this interview tomorrow for you guys, where we're going to be breaking down some of the key top flight quarterbacks around the NFL and what they need to do to improve so that their teams perform better in 2025, plus hit on some of the teams that we think are going to really do better this year or worse this year, and MVP discussion. So a lot of great information coming in tomorrow's episode. Before that, make sure that you take advantage. Our early bird pricing will end tonight. So make sure that you get over to sharpfootballanalysis.com, take advantage of that early bird pricing. And in addition, if you want that 2025 football preview book for 50% off, enter code SHARP50 and you could save 50% off the price. 586 pages of analysis previewing the upcoming season. Head on over to sharpfootballanalysis.com for all your needs, fantasy and betting, and we'll see you tomorrow. Up.